Welcome to the Azure ML Toolbox series. Today I am going to talk about import data control. There are basically two ways to import data in Azure ML. The first one is internal source or local file, and the other one is external source or non-local file. So let's talk about import data from an internal source or local file. Let's go to the bottom left hand corner of Azure ML Studio and click on New button. Then go to Dataset and select From Local File. Here you can choose your own file. So let's import Air Passengers file. Air Passengers.csv dataset has been uploaded from my local machine to Azure ML Studio. If you want to upload updated version of an existing file, then you have to select this option which says this is the new version of an existing dataset, and the file name will appear in the text box given below. Next, we have to select a type for the new dataset. Following are the file types that are supported by Azure ML. You can choose any of the file type to upload your dataset. I have selected .csv format. Next, we have provide an optional description for dataset, where you can provide the description and press OK button. The file has been successfully uploaded to Azure ML Studio, and you can use this file by going to the left pane and expanding Save Datasets tab. Go to My Datasets and select airpassengers.csv and drag this on the canvas. So here we have the dataset which we have uploaded from the local machine. Now let's talk about import data from an external source or non-local file. There is another way to import dataset, which is by using import data control. To do so, go to Data Input and Output tab in the left pane and expand it. Select Import Data Control and drag this control on the canvas. This control is very useful when you have to import data from non-static file or external sources. Let's see different properties of import data control. The first parameter is data source, where we have 7 different types. The first type is web URL via HTTP. Let's talk about the first type. When importing data from an internal source or local file, I downloaded that data from a website and then uploaded it to Azure ML. But you can also directly import data from any website into Azure ML. Using this option, we just have to copy the URL of dataset from any website and paste it in the next text box which says data source URL. So let's go to a website. I will copy this link and paste it here. Here we have the URL of the website where the data resides. Next option is data format. Here we have 4 different data formats given in the drop-down list. The formats are CSV, TSV, ARFF, SVM Lite. Let's talk about them one by one. The first data format is CSV. It is a simple file format used to store tabular data such as spreadsheet or database. It is one of the most common file format. The second data format is TSV. These are essentially text files where raw data is stored and it can be viewed using any text editors or MS Excel. The next option is ARFF, which is Attribute Relation File Format. ARFF is an ASCII text file developed for machine learning projects. The file has a list of instances sharing a set of attributes. The last option is SVM Lite. It is an implementation of support vector machines in C language. It solves classification or regression problems. Depending on the format of the file, choose appropriate option among the 4. In this, we will select CSV as our dataset is in .csv file format. We must check the checkbox below which says CSV or TSV has header row because our dataset contains headers. The next option is use cached results. This option must be checked if you want to cache the dataset for reuse on successive runs. When you check this option, the experiment will load the data the first time the module is run, and thereafter use a cached version of the dataset. I will check this option. So we first have to run the module to be able to visualize it. We have finished running the experiment and let's visualize how the imported data looks like. Here we have imported data from airpassengers.csv which has 144 rows and 3 columns. The dataset has been successfully imported from a web URL via HTTP. Next we will cover how to import data by using a Hive query. Let's go to Properties pane and select Data Source as Hive Query. This option is used to read data from Hadoop clusters and HD inside distributed storage. Hive Query is particularly useful for very large datasets. Next option is Hive Database Query. In this text box, you specify the data you want to read by using HiveQL. HiveQL is SQL-like query language. The query must return the data in tabular format. The query will be like select column list from table where expression. Below that we have hcatalog server URI. In this text box, you have to type the fully qualified name of your cluster. In Hadoop user account name, type the username that was used to create the cluster. Below that, Hadoop user account password is there. Type the password for respective account name. Below that, we have to mention location of output data. Select the option that indicates where the output data is stored. If you select HDFS, then it must be accessible by using same account name and password that you entered earlier. Also type HDFS server URI in the text box below. If you select Azure, then you have to type Azure account details like Azure account name, Azure storage key, Azure container name. Next option is use cached results. Check this box if you want to use cached results of dataset. Once you are done with setting properties, hit run at the bottom of the page. Let's talk about next data source, which is Azure SQL Database. This option enables you to use Azure SQL Database or Azure SQL Data Warehouse. In general, storing data in Azure databases is more expensive than using tables or Blob in Azure. It may also limit the data you store in Azure depending on your subscription type. Storing data in Azure database is preferred if you need to be able to filter data before reading it, or if you want to save predictions or metrics back to the database for reporting. Let's see what options can be set for using Azure SQL Database. The first option is Database Server Name. Here type the server name that is generated by Azure. The next option is Database Name. In this field, we have to type the name of an existing database on the server you just specified in the above field. Below this, type username and password. The next option is Accept any server certificate. Check this option if you want to skip reviewing the site certificate before you connect and get data. But let me warn you, this is an insecure option. Below this, we have database query. In this field, type a SQL statement that describes the data you want to read. And check this option if you want to use cached results of the dataset. Let's take an example. My database server name is this, and my database name is Now I will type my username and password. I won't select the option to accept any server certificate, and next I'll go to database query. Here I will type the database query to pull the data from this database. Once we are done with setting properties, hit run at the bottom of the page. I have finished running the experiment, and let's visualize the imported dataset. As you can see, we have successfully imported the data from Azure SQL database. Next, we will cover how to import data by using Azure Table. The next data source is Azure Table. This is a data management service in Azure that can store large amounts of structured, non-relational data. It is a NoSQL data store, so let's see how to read data from Azure Table. Let's go to authentication type. There are two options, public or SAS, and the second one is storage account. Choose public or SAS option if you know that information is provided on public data source. Otherwise, select storage account. If you selected public or SAS option, then in table URI, type or paste the full URI that defines the account or public blob. If you select storage account, then you have to mention account name, which contains blob storage. Next is account key associated with the storage account. And for table name, type the specific name of the table that you want to read. Below this, we have an option called rows to scan for property names. This option lets you select how many rows should import data scan. There are two options, top n and scan all. If you select top n, then it scans specified number of rows starting from the top of the dataset. By default, 10 rows are scanned, but you can also specify a number in this field. This is helpful in large datasets. If you select scan all, then it scans all the rows in the table. Choose this option if the data is well structured. This ensures the integrity of your resulting property and metadata conversion. Check this option if you want to use cached results of the dataset. Once you're done with setting all the properties, hit run at the bottom of the page. Let's see the next data source, which is Azure Blob Storage. Azure Blob stores large amounts of data, including binary data. Azure Blobs can be accessed from anywhere by using HTTP or HTTPS. So let's see how to read data from Azure Blob Storage. Below this, we have authentication type. There are two options in this. Choose public or SAS option if you know that the information is provided on public data source. Otherwise, select storage account. If you selected public or SAS option, then in blob URI, type or paste the full URI that defines the account and public blob. If you select storage account, then you have to provide account name, which contains blob storage. In the next field, type account key associated with the storage account. In the next field, type the name of the specific blob that you want to retrieve. You would specify the container and .csv file in this area. Next is blob file format. It indicates the format of the data that is stored in the blob so that Azure ML can process data appropriately. It supports a bunch of formats, that is ARFF, CSV, TSV, CSV with encoding, and Excel. We have already talked about ARFF, CSV, TSV in web URL data source. So let's talk about CSV with encoding. Check this option if your CSV file has been prepared with different field separator or strings. Let's go ahead and set following parameters. First one is column delimiter format. Choose between three different characters used as field separators provided in the drop-down list. which are comma, tab, and semicolon. Below that, we have encoding format. Choose the character encoding used by the file you want to read. There are a bunch of formats provided in the drop-down list. Let's talk about Excel Blob file format. Choose this option to read data from Excel workbooks stored in Azure Blob storage. Then below that, you have to specify Excel data format, which has two options, Excel sheet and Excel table. According to the option you selected in the earlier field, specify name of the worksheet or the table name in this text box. When you select spreadsheet, entire spreadsheet will be selected. You cannot specify the range of cells. You can check this option if your file has header row. And below that we have use cached results. Check this box if you want to use cached results of the dataset. Once you are done with setting all the properties, hit run at the bottom of the page. Let's talk about the next data source option, which is data feed provider. This option enables you to create an OData endpoint for a dataset where you can make your data model available for consumption via URL. You can also specify which operations are supported by OData endpoint. The next field is data content type. Here you have to select type of feed. Currently, only OData endpoints are supported by data feed providers. Below this, we have data source URL. Type the URL of a website that provides data in the required format. Select the checkbox of Use Cached Results if you want to use cached results of the dataset. Once you are done with setting all the properties, hit Run at the bottom of the page. Let's talk about the last option in data source parameter, which is on-premises SQL Server database. This option will help you to read data from an on-premises SQL Server database. Azure ML can access on-premises SQL Server database using Microsoft Data Management Gateway. So you must have Microsoft Data Management Gateway installed and registered beforehand. Next parameter is Data Gateway. Select the gateway that you created using Microsoft Data Management Gateway. Further, you have to enter database server name and database name in these fields. Going ahead, you have to enter your username, password, and database credentials. You can use Windows Integrated Authentication or SQL Server Authentication depending on how your on-premises SQL Server is configured. Next, type a SQL query in Database Query field which describes the data you want to read. You can select Use Cached Results if your dataset is not going to change in between execution of an experiment. Once you're done with setting all the parameters, hit Run at the bottom of the page. Importing data from an external source is really helpful when you have dynamic datasets. When a dataset changes, you can run the import data module individually and it will reflect updated data without affecting the other modules in an experiment. This is how import data control works.